Second, I said we had two questions that we really needed to address. The second is, how can we motivate our boys to be father warriors, to understand exactly what dad-style parenting is and why it helps children? That is, to understand exactly why dads are so needed. As we've seen in each generation's war, boys will risk death if they know they're needed, but they have to know why they're needed. Fighting Nazis was clear. Fighting in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan was not. My research for the boy crisis differentiates about 7 differences between what I call dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting. And these differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting, these are very predominant, but they are reversible. There are some men who parent a lot like moms do, and some moms that parent a lot like dads do. So this is the rule, but it's not 100%. To give you an example of dad-style parenting, dads have a much greater tendency toward roughhousing, game playing, encouraging the children to do risk-taking, or at least not preventing them from doing as much risk-taking. Less boundary setting, but more boundary enforcement. Many people don't get the difference between boundary setting and boundary enforcement, which I'll talk about in a minute. Much more likely to coach their children, much more likely to prod their children beyond their comfort zone, even doing it with things like playful teasing. Children parented with both mom and dad styles, with what I call checks and balance parenting, tend to do the best. But boys and future moms need to know why dad-style parenting is also pivotal to a child's healthy development. Here's why. For today's dads and future dads, instead of having to prepare your son to be disposable, to be honored, we have the privilege of being able to have the option of guiding our son and daughter to find a sense of purpose with a dream that reflects his or her unique personality, which we never had the option to do throughout history before. But what I discovered is that children who discover their dream without the discipline to fulfill that dream will continue failing, and soon they will stop dreaming for fear of failing. Dad-style parenting with less boundary setting, letting kids wander farther into the woods or go into the playground by themselves, creates a comfort with risk-taking and exploring dreams. And dad-style parenting with more boundary enforcement tends to help children have the discipline to fulfill their dreams. Dads are able to enforce boundaries with minimal resentment because they first build bonds with their children by doing what? What do you do to build bonds with your kids?
Love.
You play with them. You roughhouse with them. You do things like that. So let me since I didn't get a full response there, let me deal with this for a bit. Take the issue of roughhousing. Dads are far more likely to do roughhousing with their kids. So they'll say, all right, let's have a wrestling match, and they'll throw their 3 kids on the couch and say, okay, the job here is the 3 of you to jump off the couch onto my back and pin me down before I pin the 3 of you together down. Okay, Dad, that's great. And Mom's looking on and she's thinking, what? Oh my God, I think I have one more child to monitor here. And so she's really fearful, but Mom doesn't really want to be controlling, and but she also feels, so she sees the kids are having fun, so she restrains herself and tries to keep her hands off and watch what happens, but she's thinking in the back of the mind that there's a good chance that somebody's going to end up crying or somebody's going to end up being hurt. Well, Mom is only about 99% likely to be right. And sooner or later, one of the children gets hurt. And so then the mom goes to herself, okay, I feel 2 things now. One is finally he'll get it and stop this roughhousing. And then second, that I feel kind of guilty that I didn't interfere sooner and prevent the children from getting hurt. So that she's sort of back and forth in this, but at least she's saying one consolation is that now that he sees that the children were hurt, he'll at least stop the roughhousing, or at least way cut it back. And so what happens is that the father goes back to the roughhousing and continues the process. But the father doesn't explain why he's continuing something that ended up leading to the kids crying. And here's what's happening that dads don't know enough about what's happening to explain to moms, so moms therefore think that dads are being careless rather than having some intuitive sense of what is helpful to the children. The first thing that dad is doing is creating a bond with the children. So the value of the bond is that bond allows those children to hear that dad says, you can't, Johnny, what you just did, sticking your elbow in your sister's eyes, that is not okay. That's what made your sister cry. If you do that again, there'll be no more roughhousing. Okay, Dad, no problem. So the dad goes back to the roughhousing again, and what happens? The child is experiencing emotional intelligence under fire. That means the child really believes that she or he will not do any more roughhousing that hurts their brother or their sister. But when they get so excited to try to be the #1 kingpinner, to pin the father down, they get caught up, forget what their promise was, and they push their sister or brother aside again, and the whole process starts again. So this time, Dad, by returning to the roughhousing, is able to say, okay, I gave you a chance, now the roughhousing ends. There'll be no more roughhousing until tomorrow night. So tomorrow night comes, and Dad says, you can't sort of put your elbow in your sister's eye, so to speak. And the kids say, okay, but this time they know that if they put their elbow in their sister's eye, what will happen? The roughhousing will stop. They know that the mother would say exactly the same thing, don't put your elbow in your sister's eye. But if they did do that, the chances are fairly good the mother would repeat the command. I just told you, don't put your elbow in your sister's eye. You can't do that, or I will stop the roughhousing. Dad just stops the roughhousing, as a rule. And so what the children learn from Dad is that when Dad says something, if like I'm going to lose the roughhousing, sticking my elbow in my sister's eye is I now have an incentive to think of my sister's needs rather than my own needs, because when I think of my sister's needs, I get more of what I want, the roughhousing. So the data shows that the children involved with their dads are far more likely to be empathetic. But can you imagine a father saying to a mother, I want to do more roughhousing with our children in order to develop empathy? It would be like, what? This is so counterintuitive, it would go nowhere, and the mother would think the dad is not only, roughhousing and the child, but mentally a little bit challenged, because the dynamic is not explained by the dad, that I have now given the children an incentive. Moms often look on and they say, I'm kind of annoyed. I devote more of my life to my children than the father does. And yet when I say something, I keep having to repeat it. When he says something, the children do it. I don't get why that is. And I'm kind of angry and I'm hurt. And I feel disrespected for that. Because dads don't explain to moms that what they're doing by enforcing the boundary immediately, after one warning and one try, that the next time that the roughhousing is cut out, and when the kids go, oh, you're so mean, mommy doesn't cut it out, the roughhousing like that, and dad says, with me, you do, we made an agreement, you know why that's not a good thing to do, and when you do it, there's consequences. So we now have the data to show that children who do roughhousing with dads are far more likely to be empathetic. Second, if the dad said, oh, I'm teaching the children to be assertive, that would seem counterintuitive also. The mom would think, no, wait a minute, you're teaching the children to be aggressive. Look, you're doing the roughhousing. But in fact, when dad says it's the next time the roughhousing happens, and Jimmy doesn't put his elbow in his sister's eye, but pushes his brother or sister out of the way, but does it roughly, the dad stops the roughhousing again and says, well, wait a minute, I didn't put my elbow in my sister's eye. What's the matter? You pushed too hard. So the next time he tries to push much more softly, and then he finds out exactly how far he can push without assertiveness becoming aggressive. And so what the children learn also, we have the data now to know, that what the children learn with the dad roughhousing is that when the dad combines the roughhousing with the boundary enforcement, what the children learn is the distinction between being assertive and aggressive. You can give all the speeches in the world to children about the differences between being assertive versus aggressive, but it's not until they do it and see what is too aggressive and what is okay that the children actually have an emotional experience and a body-mind connection experience with what is aggressive versus what is assertive.